Luckily, here in Lexington, we have a great internet connection. And, my husband and I are fortunate enough to be able to afford really fast service. We do know that that's not the case, and for everybody in Kentucky, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Thanks for joining us for the first Lunch and Learn of the Prichard Committee's annual meeting. I'm Jessica Fletcher. I'm the Communications Director for the Prichard Committee. Today, we're talking about something that was already an issue before the pandemic, but when students and workers were sent home to quarantine last spring, it became an emergency. The digital divide for far too many Kentuckians who don't have access to the internet, the problem is twofold. Some can't afford it, and some simply don't live where there's an infrastructure in place. It's hard to say how many Kentuckians don't have access for a couple of reasons. It depends on how you define adequate. Does this simply mean having broadband or having a smartphone with internet capabilities? Or it could mean that the number of people with access has increased due to the pandemic, with organizations, local governments, and others stepping in to help. That's what we're here to focus on today, is what the local community response has been to closing the digital divide. And we have three guests who will be kind of talking about that local reaction. Today joining us, we have Joe Meyer, the mayor of Covington. We also have Roger Fannin, an agent from Kentucky Farm Bureau in Harlan County. And we also are trying to get Jeff Dobson, who is the judge executive from Knott County, online to join us. So just before we do that, though, I wanted to kind of go over kind of a high-level overview of what the digital divide looks like in Kentucky. In Kentucky right now, 82% of Kentuckians, at least according to the 2018 U.S. Census, had access to the internet. That means 18% still need access for education, employment, and healthcare. The fact remains that Kentucky ranks 42nd among 50 states in broadband access, and that's something we need to improve on if the Commonwealth is going to achieve a big, bold future, something that the Prichard Committee will be further defining throughout its annual meeting. The digital divide obviously has huge implications for education, and if not addressed swiftly during the pandemic, it will make our already wide achievement gap much wider, moving us backwards in education progress. Students from preschool through college are now relying on Wi-Fi internet to deliver their educations daily. Thanks to the Department of Education, our state was ahead of the nation in having all of its schools online. But as we all know, that only helps students when they are within the walls of the building. Now that they're at homes, all bets are off. Our student voice team asked nearly 10,000 Kentucky middle and high school students how they were impacted by online learning when they conducted their Coping with COVID survey last spring. 7.2% of low-income students reported never having access. For March to the end of the school year, that meant students spent 1 hour a day or less on their education. Let's let that sink in. On their path to a big, bold future, students without reliable internet access were receiving an hour a day or less of Kentucky public education. Students who had reliable access to Wi-Fi reported higher levels of motivation and work manageability. It goes without saying that this could turn the achievement gap into an achievement chasm. That's why we need to be working at the state, local, and federal levels to provide both short-term and long-term solutions and strategies, closing the digital divide with a passion for our students. We also have to have a passion for our families and Kentucky's future in order to make this work. You can easily find out how large the digital divide in your county is by looking at this study by the University of Kentucky's Community and Economic Development Initiative. The link in the chat box will show you where your county stands. I've provided Rockcastle County as an example here because that's where I went to middle and high school. My parents live there now and do not have internet access in their remote home in Brodhead, Kentucky. If I was still in high school, I would be stuck in the digital divide. The UK study shows that access drastically varies. In Lee County, 70% of the population don't have reliable internet access, but in Oldham County, just 1.7% don't. That's a huge divide. CARES Act money has helped in closing the digital divide and providing access to some low-income families who work is already in progress to build more infrastructure through Kentucky Wired, but there's so much more that needs to be done. We're seeing great innovations in many areas of the state, and we have 3 guests here who are going to talk about how they're acting locally. First, let's talk to Covington Mayor Joe Meyer, who has done a lot of work in his city to bring internet access to low-income people. Joe?
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. And I'm very pleased to be able to talk about Covington Connect and what we've done here in the city. After the schools closed and everybody had to revert to remote teaching and learning, we recognized that we had a serious problem here in Covington. Covington schools have more than 90% of their students are free and reduced lunch eligible, and they tend to rank right at the top of the state in the highest concentration of student poverty. And according to the superintendent Garrison, 59% of Covington's public school students do not have regular access to the internet. So the city of Covington, at its initiative, put together a coalition of folks that involved the Housing Authority of Covington, the public schools, Cincinnati Bell, and a charity out of Houston, Texas called CompuDot. And what we did was we made a decision that we wanted to take the same type of free Wi-Fi that we make available in our downtown business area and extend it throughout the entire community. So we worked with the school district, and we got the addresses of all of their students, and we went through a mapping process to see what it would take to put Wi-Fi access points in a manner that would cover the majority of the students. And through our mapping, we found that we could cover 80% of the Covington Public School students with free Wi-Fi. So with our partnership, the Cincinnati Bell worked with us to run the fiber infrastructure through the parts of the city that were unserved. The Housing Authority agreed to provide free Wi-Fi to all of its apartments and the 2 largest housing projects, which have a surprisingly large number of students. The public schools agreed to reimburse Covington for some of its expenses. And so we managed a $2.5 million project to bring free Wi-Fi throughout most of the city. So far, we are at the point where all the public housing projects do have free Wi-Fi operational right now. And for the rest of the city, the free Wi-Fi will be available by the end of this year. We used CARES Act money to provide the free Wi-Fi. Now, having access to free Wi-Fi is great, and free internet is great, but it doesn't matter for much if you don't have an adequate tool. So this is where CompuDot came in. CompuDot is a Houston, Texas-based charity that gives away free computers to eligible families with small children. So CompuDot agreed to provide 1,900 free computers. So we had a number of other community partners work to inform folks throughout the community and have them sign up for the free computers that went through a selection process. And we've had a couple of distributions already. So we've given away, I think, about 800 computers to families so far. The CompuDot not only gives away the computers, and these are desktop computers, but they also provide up to 2 years of free technical access. So we looked at it from the perspective of the whole package. Our primary motivation was to make sure every kid in Covington has access to the internet, both from a accessibility perspective, but then secondly through the use of appropriate equipment. And say the cost about $2.5 million. We paid for it with CARES funds. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that people might have about that.
Any questions from the group before we talk a little bit more with Joe?
Okay. Well, you know, the bottom line now is that by the end of this year, Covington will have the overwhelming majority of its city living in the world of free Wi-Fi, which we believe will help all of our students, but we also know it will help their parents, because in this day and age, you need to have internet access if you're going to apply for a job or do all of the things that we do. We believe that internet access is as much of an infrastructure issue as water and sewer in this day and age. So we believe we've helped the schools and that we've helped the students, but we've also helped the broader community by choosing to use the CARES Act money in this manner.
Well, we really appreciate that. And just speaking on a personal note, I was born in Covington and lived there till I was 8 years old. And I still have so many family members who still live there and know that the poverty in the city can really kind of be an enormous burden to bear. So I'm really glad that you are working to close that divide, just on behalf of the family I have that still lives there. Let's see.
Question.
Yes.
This is so wonderful, and thank you for sharing about this. My question was, there some kind of training for families? What I'm seeing is like our school district providing computers for some families, but the families then don't really know what to do with it and how to access their child's classroom and that kind of thing. How did you address that?
Actually, we've been working with the Community Action Commission to provide that sort of training, and we're working with another organization here in Covington called Esperanza, which is our Latino center, to make sure that our Hispanic community has a friendly group that's helping them work their way through the world of computers. And in fact, you know, in my life, that's why we have children and grandchildren. You know, we just rely on them to teach us how to use this stuff.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary Evans. We have actually a question in the chat box from Mary Gwen Wheeler, who is asking, what happens when the CARES funds run out? Will free Wi-Fi still be available?
As part of our deal, we paid the operating expenses for the free Wi-Fi for 5 years.
Oh, great.
So, you know, we figure that the lifespan of the technology is fairly short. So in 5 years, we'll probably be looking at different models. So we've got a 5-year investment, no operating cost for the school district or the city government because we paid for it all up front.
Have you heard from any students themselves who have talked about what impact that this has had? Can you kind of share any of those stories?
Well, I have not personally heard any of those yet.
Okay. Well, anything else you want to share with us, Joe, before we move on?
No, I think having a community, this is a good example of a city government working in the realm of public education and a partnership relationship with the Board of Education. You know, we are not required to have done this in order to help out our students and our school district, but we believe that one of the foundational elements of a good city are good public schools. So we want to be a city of opportunity so that everybody who lives in the city has a chance of success in life, and providing this from our city resources makes the educational access that much more meaningful to the students who live in our city and their parents.
Great. Doug Jones is asking, did you collaborate on this approach at all with any outside agencies?
Well, like I say, our partners in this were it was a coalition put together by the city. So we got the housing authority to participate. Obviously, we worked with the public schools, both in terms of deciding where the Wi-Fi access points would be located so that we can ensure the broadest possible coverage for public school students. And the public schools contributed about 10% of the overall cost to the city. We worked with Cincinnati Bell, and they expanded the fiber infrastructure at their expense. And of course, they're providing the Wi-Fi access points. And we had some of our businesses in the community, Blair Technology and Reed Gadget, worked particularly well with us in recruiting CompuDot so that we could expand the availability of computers throughout the city.
Okay.
So as we did it, with our own people, our own resources here.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk a little bit about Kentucky Farm Bureau. I know that they basically opened up all of their parking lots across the state as a free Wi-Fi hotspot for students who need to come in and download any lesson plans or anything that they need from their teachers. So Roger Fannin, would you please kind of talk to us about why Kentucky Farm Bureau did that and what the local reactions have been? Roger, are you there? Or are you on mute possibly? I know we had him on earlier.
You hear me okay?
Yes, there you are.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
We have great Wi-Fi, but I could use a little help on the technology part of it. So
I think we all could some days.
first of all, let me say thank you for being a part of this today. I've heard about the Prichard Committee all of my adult life, and so it's a pleasure to take part in what's going on. I think it's very important. The Kentucky Farm Bureau, can you hear me okay?
Yes, are you on video though? We don't see you.
I am. I should be on video. I'm on my phone actually, and because I was going off the Wi-Fi. But if you can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. We'll just go with your voice.
If you just want to go that way, we'll do that. So we actually opened the Wi-Fi statewide on August 26th. We have about 182 agent offices across the state, plus 15 regional claims offices that are all wired and ready. And to give you, even in my county, in Harlan County, we have two different approaches, you might say. We have two public school systems. We are located in the city limits of Harlan. And in the city, there's an independent school. The independent school district gave me numbers that about 98.1% of their students have internet access, which I thought was very good, very high.
Very high.
Yeah, the reliability of high-speed internet, that's a different story. They don't have any numbers on that. Checked with the county school board. They are still assessing countywide, because I'm sure that number would not be 98% countywide. So we know that it's serving a good purpose, what we're doing, and it may not be so much, it's going to vary from county to county, because our office is more in a small, it's a smaller urban area, as opposed to some offices that are located in very rural areas. And it's going to be different. But locally, I know that the local school districts have promoted the fact that we're offering the Wi-Fi. We have certainly witnessed some students being around the building, in the mornings and afternoons, and that's fine. Some offices across the state have actually put up picnic tables and things like that to welcome that kind of thing. So, I think it's a mixed bag. of what's happening from office to office. But I think it's a tremendous thing. My wife is a reading teacher, so she was very excited about it. And so, it's all good.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Kentucky Farm Bureau as a whole for doing this at a statewide level. Do you know possibly how many families have come to the parking lots? Or are you tracking this in any way to know what kind of impact you're having?
We're not tracking. We offer the service from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. and our regular business hours are from 9:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. So that we really don't track what's happening after hours and that type of thing. But we do know that we've had a couple of instances in the mornings when we've opened the door that we've had students, with backpacks, near our front door on our way in.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we've had folks in the parking lot in their cars. It's hard to really point. We're, like I said, we're centrally located in an area with about 98% Wi-Fi. So, I don't know if my personal story will match what's going on in even more rural Kentucky. Someone had told me an interesting story, though. They were talking about, they said that their Wi-Fi had actually gone out during the week, maybe a few days ago, and they had actually drove to the parking lot because the daughter needed to upload an assignment. And again, I think speed is something, is a part of this. If you have a video that you're trying to upload, you could be looking at 7-8 hours, and if you have the proper Wi-Fi, it could be uploaded in a matter of minutes.
Right. Well, it's good. I mean, it's a difficult situation to be in, that we have to rely on parking lots for education, but we're very grateful that you're able to provide that service, and look forward to hearing more about how Kentucky Farm Bureau is reacting and taking in students from all over the state. Let's see, is Jeff Dobson on the call? I haven't seen his name pop up. Okay, well, sounds like he had some issues getting connected, but I would like to, if he doesn't mind, talk to Keith Gabbard, who joined us several months ago on our Innovations in Education episode, as we were talking about some local internet service providers and how they were helping out during this time. And Keith's group, People's Rural Telephone, has basically wired all of Owsley and Jackson counties, and most citizens there actually have internet access to their homes. They're offering low-cost alternatives and other ways to get people online and learning, or in the workforce, or accessing healthcare. So Keith, if you don't mind, would you like to jump on and say a few words about People's Rule?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Of course, I was planning on just being a spectator at this meeting, but I certainly don't mind telling our story. We think we have a good story to tell.
You do. We've heard it, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to just kind of reiterate why you did that and how that has especially helped out during this pandemic.
Yeah, and of course, the first thing we've done to help, our education, healthcare, and economic development and everything was just to build fiber to the home, to both every home and business in Jackson and Owsley County. And we've since expanded into Lee County and Clay County, and we're doing some portions of those counties, but it takes a while, and we certainly don't serve all of those counties, and we're competing with other entities in those counties. But in Jackson and Owsley County, we're pretty much the main or only landline component. There are wireless providers, but we we can get up to a gigabit every single home and business, and our minimum speed is 100 meg up and down. But we have offered a special plan for students who qualify under poverty guidelines, who maybe can't afford broadband. We're offering a special plan for them at 25 meg up and down at $19.95, and then there's a federal discount they would get $10, so it's really $10 a month. We're also doing a lot of the Wi-Fi hotspots too. We've got 8 or 9 of them in our communities, whether it be at our office or local fire departments or other places. We're doing the free Wi-Fi drive up. As you said, that's not ideal. That's not what we want. We want everyone to have availability of broadband. And of course, not just availability, as we talked about a few weeks ago when I was on one of the webcasts. It's affordability as well, and that's why we've offered some of these lower income, lower price plans, trying to help students or people that work from home. We have a lot of those people in our community partly because of a partnership we've had with some people, and partly because of some really good broadband speeds. But what else would you want to know? I can talk all day, and I know you don't want to.
Just I know you actually started this project in 2014. How have you seen kind of your county change as a result of being better connected?
Well, actually, we ended it in 2014. We started in 2008. It's about a 6-year process. It's $50 million to build fiber to every home and business. But we've seen some big improvements. There are people actually moving into these 2 counties from different states all over the country. I won't say it's all because of our broadband and our fiber, but that's part of the reason. Certainly they want to get away from urban America and get out in the country, and the beautiful country that we live in. But we've seen work from home jobs been a big thing. The 2 counties we serve, we've helped create over 1,000 work from home jobs. And
wow.
It's pretty amazing through Teleworks USA and some partnerships we developed with our county government, our city government, the Teleworks folks, the EK7 folks out of Hazard, and we tried to do, even our electric cooperative have participated in that as well. And it's been very successful. And our 2 counties probably been the biggest success story in Eastern Kentucky for Teleworks USA. Our schools, we've always partnered with them. We've had fiber connecting each school probably for 20 years. But getting it to those people's homes in that last mile, to those students' homes in that last mile, has been a challenge. We've offered, I know when COVID first started back in March and all the kids had to go back home, we offered some free installation and 3 months free for students that didn't have broadband. It's been such a challenge for us. We've had several of our own employees get the virus, including me.
Wow.
And we've challenged to keep our own people safe and get that broadband installed in places that don't have it. It's really been a balance. We think we're doing everything right, and then all of a sudden 7 people in our office get COVID, and that's with the doors closed, just doing drive-through only. So you never know. This is certainly a real thing, and it's impacted us. But we've continued to be able to install broadband services to people that want them and need them, and we're trying to not just provide a service here. We're trying to improve and help our communities to be better places to work and to live. And we've been lucky enough to get some national attention. On the New Yorker wrote an article about our company back in December, and we actually had a national TV show did a segment on us back about 3 weeks ago called The Race, and they did a segment on PRTC as well. So we've been able to get some positive publicity, but that just helps other people know what we're doing, and hopefully we'll encourage others to do something similar.
Thank you for sharing your story. Does anybody have any questions before we start talking about some other areas? I do see one in the chat. Did the local utility invest the $50 million, or was it local tax dollars?
It was the local utility, although we did get some government money. There was back in ARA, American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, back in 2008. There was some money for rural broadband. We applied for it, and we were able to get a $25 million grant loan. So of the $50 million, 10% was our own capital. 60% was loan and 30% was grant.
Right.
That's how the numbers worked out. So it was all the utility and with some luck, luckily with some grant money from the USDA.
Any other questions?
And since then, I might add, as we branch out in some of these other counties, we've been getting some other smaller combination grant loans from some of the USDA programs. And in Lee County, for example, we've got 2 or 3 small grants, and we're aggressively building out in Lee County. That's one of the counties that desperately needs it, as you
Yes.
mentioned early. And we're building fiber throughout a large portion of Lee County. It takes time to get it done, though.
Right.
And unfortunately, now's when they need it the worst, but it may be 2 or
Mhm.
3 years before it gets completed.
Well, and that's why we're really grateful for programs like Mayor Myers and Kentucky Farm Bureau, who can step in the short term and help for families in need. So just one more check to see if Jeff Dobson was able to join us. If not, I'll just share a little bit about what they have done in Knott County. So we received a note from the educational cooperative in Eastern Kentucky saying that Knott County Sportsplex has opened up their location for children in Knott County to do virtual learning assignments if Wi-Fi isn't available. They have provided everything from tables and social distance, following social distancing guidelines, and they're open from 8 p.m. or from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day for virtual learning activities. They just really felt like students needed some place to go during the day. Although a parent or guardian does have to be with, I think, kids under 15 there in Knott County, that has really provided a lot of help for those families. And I know LEX 18 traveled to Knott County last week to do a story about that. So lots of great things are happening all over the state to help students receive education in a time when they need it most. So let me pull up our PowerPoint again and we will keep going. So another great bright spot is United Way of Greater Cincinnati and some other local entities have helped more than 1,000 Northern Kentucky families receive access to low-cost internet. They've provided both Wi-Fi hotspots, paid Wi-Fi bills, or provided computers similar to what Mayor Myers is doing in Covington. Wolfe County Schools also has stepped up to pay for internet access for students who can't afford it. So there are about 5% of those students, and the district has decided to foot the bill to make sure that all students are connected from their homes. So really a lot of great stories from all over the state. And now we want to hear from any of our guests online today to kind of talk about what they're seeing, what needs need to be met, and really how we can build a groundswell for a big, bold future by providing internet access and closing the digital divide right now. Is there anybody on the call who would like to kind of share or ask any questions? Well, hearing none, let's talk a little. Yes.
Jessica, it's Perry. I'm sorry. I didn't want to jump in and ask questions if other people did. I was just going to ask to, I think, Roger's point, and maybe just all the people that we're discussing, just your all's reflections or opinions about speed, internet speed, where you see that issue going, and if you have any insights into what speeds are really necessary as we think forward for people to really maximize their participation in education and healthcare and job opportunities. This is, I think, a point of just confusion and uncertainty, and but I think, as Roger pointed out, it makes a difference. Just wanted to...
This is Roger. I believe broadband, I know that we're online here. Mr. Gabbard may be able to speak better about this because I'm certainly no technical guru as demonstrated today with my phone, but that absolutely. We also have a teleworks hub in Harlan, and just like Mr. Gabbard was pointing out, that's happening in his area. We are seeing more and more people working from home, with good employment opportunities. And I think going forward, it's going to become paramount that accessibility may not be the issue as much as speed. My son just finished college, and he was finishing up his last semester and had to come home. And we had to upgrade internet in order for him to complete his assignments. And it was just incredible. And the affordability, because if you're upgrading, obviously you're going to be paying, more price. But I believe that's really where the focus going forward is going to be.
One thing we've been talking about internally is how do you define adequate access? Is
Yes.
that, a high-speed internet connection? Is that just simply having a cell phone so you can talk to your teacher or, watch a recorded lesson? And nobody really seems to have that answer. So, as Prichard Committee continues in this work through the pandemic, we really want to reach a definition of what is adequate access.
One thing I've learned in my history in this business is the customer always wants, no matter what speed you provide, they want it faster and they want it cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember we had dial-up. It wasn't that many years ago, but now our minimum speed's 100 meg up and down. And the FCC, their definition of broadband is 25 down and 3 up, and then in some cases it's 10 down and 1 up. But a lot of these work from home jobs require the same speed up as down. So in other words, 10-10 would be a better. And in our company, we provide the same speeds up as down. Most companies don't, but we're seeing a big, especially people work from home and school kids, they need that up speed as well as the down, and it's all over the board about what's adequate speed. 5 years from now, 100 megs what everybody's going to want and say they need, and it'll be a gig one of these days probably, which is 1,000 meg.
Yes.
We discussed that at length in Covington. I'm not a technical expert by any stretch of the imagination, but we thought that the speed had to be sufficient so that folks could participate in programs like this one. And if you're getting a 5 meg or a 10 meg, that doesn't allow you to do that. So our system provides for a minimum of 250 megabit speed throughout the entire city. Our technical advisors indicated that they thought that speed would enable all of the students and the teachers to communicate effectively.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good speed.
See if there are any questions in the chat box.
Hi, this is Mary Gwen Wheeler.
Oh.
Just to switch the subject slightly, I was pleased to hear the discussion about a college kid too. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is that community college enrollment is down, and the thought is that it's probably some of the same issues that are affecting our public school kids that are low income and vulnerable or don't have access, and that internet access is for a total online program is critical, and that could be part of what's happening along with other reasons. But I just wondered if there's anybody that's had experience any place that has where the community colleges have been able to provide the internet access. I know a lot of them are doing hotspots in their own campuses and free Wi-Fi, but if people aren't coming to the campus, you know, what the option is. So Jefferson in Louisville had a number of computers that they were going to be, you know, giving away, and they refurbished them and gave them out free. And, you know, but that was a, you know, a certain number who did that. So devices and Wi-Fi, anybody that had experiences with college age as well.
Mary Gwen, not that we have talked to directly, but just knowing, you know, the reach of our student voice team, we know that is becoming a barrier, and we've heard a lot of stories about students taking a gap year between starting school just because they didn't, of all the uncertainties, and they didn't know if they would have great access. So we know it's just as important, perhaps even slightly more important, to make sure that our college kids have what they need. And it sounds like we do need a more concerted effort to make sure that access is there somehow. So one thing that we want to do, because we as the Prichard Committee are working on our next 3-year strategic plan, we're trying to ask questions during all of these sessions to gauge what is happening in your communities, and then to kind of build out what we need to be focusing on. So if you will look at, let me make sure I am screen sharing.
Hey, Jessica.
Yes, ma'am.
If I can pop in for a minute with a question of our panelists.
Okay.
Before we get to those questions, this is Bridget Blum-Ramsey. And I'm curious from our panelist perspective, as other folks from across the state are listening in, what do you advise them as community leaders, citizen leaders, elected officials, policymakers? What do you suggest they do locally to kind of spur the type of progress with respect to the digital divide each of you has been able to realize?
Well, this is Roger. I guess my focus is insurance and not technology, but I will give you my take on it.
Okay.
You know, I think that as business leaders, civic leaders, you know, we all have some burden to try to make a difference. Just like I really enjoy listening to Mr. Gabbard in particular, and the mayor both. You know, we have to take the responsibility and try to promote the kind of change that we want, and by offering Wi-Fi, by working to get Wi-Fi in areas that may not have it, and doing the fiber optics. You know, it takes a lot to keep this ship moving, you know, and it's a big responsibility, and I would just encourage, you know, folks that are interested in their communities to get involved, business leaders to get involved, and try to do more things, you know, like this, you know, even in a small way. I feel like what we're doing is a very small part of the picture, but to that child that's using it, it's huge, and I think that's just the way I view it.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Roger.
From a utility or incumbent provider standpoint, from my perspective, you know, we get calls from people in counties that have very poor internet and say, okay, how can we do what you guys did there in Jackson and Allen County? Or will you come and serve us? Probably more common to hear that. And for, you know, there's a limit to how much money people have in order to do that. And also it takes a lot of time to build fiber. But I think building fiber is the best way to get, they call it future proof. I'm not sure if anything's future proof, but it's the closest thing to it. It's fiber optic. But it takes a while to build. Like I said, it took us 6 years to build ours, and then in our 2 counties. But there, I think you would want to partner with anybody in your community, whether it's the city government, the county government, your local TV cable company, or local telephone company, your local electric cooperative or company, any of those entities can partner together and either on their own or partnering with other entities can help with broadband. And there are funds available through USDA, through the federal government, and the state has just developed a program for give some matching loan and grants, although they haven't put any money into it yet. But we're like 38 states in the country have their own programs, state programs, separate from the federal programs. And we see Kentucky going that way as well, although we're probably spent most of our money on Kentucky Wired and not focused on the last mile as much. But the last mile is the most expensive and the most important part. And we know that because we've provided it. And, you know, in general, there's a lot of different resources, but the best resource is your incumbent providers. But if you can't get it there, you know, there are people maybe in surrounding counties that might be interested in. I know, for example, we branched down into a couple of counties that were desperate for broadband and that were close to us that we've never served before. And that's you might be able to get that from someone else, some small carrier like us, because a lot of small companies like us are doing fiber to the home, and most people never heard of us, but I'm prejudiced, but I think we're doing a good job in providing broadband.
No doubt, Keith. An excellent job. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions for the panelists, Bridget, or anyone?
I do not, Jessica.
Okay, well, let's move on and just kind of have a quick conversation about what we need to do to move forward. If you will go to slido.com and enter the code F542, you will see a question pop up, and I will share those questions on the screen just so we can kind of collect where everybody's from and what's going on at a local level. But really the big question for us is, what should we do? What should we focus on moving forward as we get further and further into the pandemic, and as students spend, you know, longer times away from school, or even if they're on a hybrid schedule, what does that look like? So really trying to react to what's happening on a day-to-day basis, but also keep moving forward and build this big, bold future that I think is so very important. So I'm going to advance the question after everybody has answered the question of what are the barriers to internet access in your community. I'm then going to start the poll that says, what county or school district do you live in? Those will just be open for a couple of minutes because I really want people to have time to respond to what actions are being taken at the local level, and then what can we do to ensure every student achieves proficiency and beyond despite the digital divide. So the next question, what county school do you live in, is now active. If everybody will take just a couple of minutes to do that. I'm going to try to pull this up on screen so people can see the answers. I'm seeing Boone County, or great representation in Northern Kentucky. So thanks to you all who could join us. Well, it is not letting me share my internet page, but we've got Jefferson County, Bowling Green, Mercer County, Rowan County, Knott County, Bracken County, Warren County, Fayette County. So many people from out the state were able to join us today. So thanks for participating. I'm going to now open up the next question and ask what actions are being taken in your communities. So that poll is now active. Ongoing community discussions, free Chromebooks and hotspots. One thing I didn't mention earlier is we did a poll of superintendents across the state earlier this summer and asked them how they were getting access to students who might not have any. And we were seeing a lot of them saying they were providing lessons on flash drives, allowing kids to come pick up those flash drives, save their lessons to those, and then turn them back in. So, you know, kind of a mix between analog and digital, having people complete their homework offline, but then turning it in digitally. So that seemed to be a pretty common occurrence throughout the state. Other people are saying only hotspots, no investment in infrastructure or help paying for internet, free Chromebooks from the school system. That's happening a lot, but we're also seeing a shortage of Chromebooks across the country and possibly even across the globe. Obviously, a lot of schools are using specifically Chromebooks, not just laptops of any kinds, but Chromebooks to access Google Classrooms. And so there is a little bit of a shortage, and we've heard from some superintendents that has caused some kids to have to go without in the first few weeks of school. Yeah, most are saying free Chromebooks and hotspots. So going to move on now to our last question, which is, in the weeks and months ahead, what can we do to ensure every student achieves proficiency and beyond despite the digital divide? So this question is really going to help us as we start planning what our next 3 years look like and how we focus our efforts across the state. Giving just everybody just a few minutes to type, because this is a little bit of an essay question for you. Continued conversations with intention not to become lax or fatigued thinking. It's just as good as it gets. Community collaboration efforts in education, infrastructure, and rural communities. Great suggestions. Continued conversations with intention. Oh, sorry, I already read that one. Grants to provide in-home internet for families demanding local investments in infrastructure from local governments. Internet is now as essential as water and electricity. Yes, we absolutely agree. Confirm necessary specs for nature and frequency of use, multiple simultaneous users in one household for work, school, etc. Lastly, ensuring tech proficiency among teachers and instructors. That's a big one. One thing that came up just on a personal level was my mother has been a literacy coach at Rockcastle County Schools since I was in 8th grade, and she recently said that a lot of the teachers in her school were trying to get Google certified and none of them were passing the test. And that obviously is going to leave a lot of kids needing better instruction. So hopefully that will change throughout the year. Reimagine everything and not automatically say it can't be done. Good point. Take some pressure off of our schools and teachers. We depend on schools for every aspect of holistic worth, and it's detrimental to academics and a misuse of resources. Not making not only making sure that all students have access, but having the expertise to train and protect our children. Great point. All right, well, we are almost at 1 o'clock, so I just would like to open it up again to see if anybody has any final questions or parting thoughts. All right, well, the last thing that we will ask of you is to make sure that Congress knows that federal funds are still needed in many, many different ways to close the digital divide. For several months, we've had this call to action that allows you to just with a few clicks send a message to your local congressperson. And with this QR code on the screen or with the URL there at the bottom, you can easily send a message to Congress. We really hope that you will do that, and as always, keep us informed about what's happening in your community to close the digital divide. We're going to keep talking about this issue as long as it is necessary. So thanks for joining us again today, and please feel free to email me. I'm at jessica.fletcher@prichardcommittee.org if you have any questions or want to talk about this further. Thanks to all of our guests for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.